Yo, what's up, everybody?
What is up, my illustrious co-host? How you doing today?
Ooh, I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I am doing well. My name is Blake.
I'm Will, and I guess I'm doing well too. Sorry for the grammatically incorrect response, and I need to shame me like that in front of everybody.
Well, welcome everyone who's listening to the Pixelist podcast. This is the space. This is the place to be to join in on the discussion of all things amazing and fun to talk about. We talk about shows, movies, games, all sorts of things that we're interested in and really enjoy. And hopefully, you're here for the journey. You're here along for the ride. And this is our series on Exandria Unlimited. It is a it is a
Sorry.
Dungeons and Dragons. Sorry for doing that. That was a huge mistake. It is a Dungeons and Dragons Twitch streamed game. I was going to say by a team. It's not by a team. It's by a group of friends that are collectively known as basically the Critical Role team. And they stream on a weekly basis. They do long form story content on a weekly basis over several months, actually spanning over a few years. And right now we are going through their mid-season, or excuse me, it's more like buffer seasonal content, which is they finished campaign 2, we're waiting for campaign 3, and what we have now is Exandria Unlimited, which is an 8-episode story arc where we get to see a new journey begin again. And Will
Right.
and myself, we are here to talk about it, to tell us what we love about it, and to share what we think about it. So that's what this show is. So welcome, and we're glad to have you here today.
That's right. That's right. And man, these episodes are long, so I guess we should just jump right into it. Like this, episode 2 is what we're going to be talking about today, and I think it was about 4 hours. Is that? I actually didn't even look, but I think it was about four.
Yeah, it was just over 4 hours, and I only know that because I was watching my kid, and my wife was kind of like, "So how much longer is that?" And I was like, "Well, we got about 2.5 more hours left."
Oh,
But
gosh.
yeah. So it's definitely long form content. I think of it, and again, we read into this in our first episode. But we have people who are probably watching this who are diehard Critical Role fans, diehard D&D fans who are like, "Yep, we're here, we're ready." And then there might be people here who are watching because they followed our Loki discussion or one of our other pieces of content, and they're like, "Yeah, what is this?" So I'll just say we're essentially taking a very long story on a weekly basis, around 4 hours, and Will and I are going to do our best to break it down in as efficient a way, but there's a lot to talk about. So
Yeah, there is. And yeah, I guess to start things off, since it is so long, we'll give a little recap. We plan on doing that every episode. So, whether you need a refresher or just maybe haven't even watched it but want to take part in the discussion, here you go, you're in luck. Um all right, so episode 2, Exandria Unlimited. All right. So the episode started out with our party still in Amon, shortly after their warehouse shenanigans from the last episode. And Fern is currently struggling with leaving the baby Ankeg behind and is considering going to get it. The party basically talks her out of this, though, and they begin to plot their next moves. And they ultimately decide that getting out of town is probably the best option as they realize they are currently being watched. So uh, Fern actually dodges a dagger, and they're like, okay, yeah, like we need to get out of here. So they head for the gate, and they actually run into two members of the Nameless Ones who confront them. And Opal and Dorian both try to charm these people, but only Opal is successful. And so she takes the the one she charmed away to like go get a beer, while the rest of the party dispatches the other. And Opal has like in this time that they dispatch the other, she goes and ties this guy up and basically convinces them they're about to get into some kinky stuff. But the rest of the party shows up and they're like, "Let's get out of here." So they actually then quickly dispatch the charmed guy and they head out of town. Um, so they decide to camp for the night because it's late, and so they make a little trek into the woods. make a campsite. Fern actually creates them something pretty nice, and they, battle down for the night and start talking about what their next moves are. Orem still wants to go to the Fire Ashari, let him know about this residuum that they've found, and that's his main plan. No one else really has any main ideas, so they're all like, yep, let's do it. But so then Fern asks about this circlet that they've found, and they're trying to figure out what exactly this thing is. And she decides to touch it, which she didn't do in episode 1, and it is revealed that she does not get sick. So she is also not a good alignment. After this, Opal decides to inspect it for herself, and when she puts her hand on it, the sky gets dark and she begins to have a vision. She can see the circlet within the box clearly, and she begins to hear the skittering of spiders all around her. And then one massive spider leg comes into view before she shakes out of it. She shares this with the party and then kind of jests about a king spider, a spider king. But then Orem and Dorian both let her know that the Spider Queen is indeed a figure in Exandrian legend, a betrayer god, and Orem used to hear scary stories about her when he was a child. They then speculate that this circlet may be her crown. So, in this conversation, then Dorian's like, and in fact, it might be a vestige of divergence, which is like these items of great power from the time of the calamity. And that's when Orem pipes up and is like, yeah, I've seen one of those. It's held by the leader of my people, Keyleth, aka the voice of the Tempest. And then a few of them start speaking up about, Keyleth and these legendary things. And they're just wrestling with like, okay, well, like, how did we get this precious item? Like, what should we do with this? And Fern mentions that her grandmother may know what to do with it and they could take it to her. But she lives in the Feywild and that is very far away. And they're like, yeah, that is far away. How did you get here? And she's asked about it, and Ashley actually rolls a natural 20. And so she is able to peel back this memory that she had that was kind of being clouded by another memory, and she's able to see into the truth of it and remembers walking with her grandmother to this great stone gate, um, and passing through it and walking for what felt like forever, but also just a second. And eventually she appeared near Singorn and then made her way to Amon. Um, so after hearing all that, they're like, "Yeah, okay. But how about we just go to the Fire Ashari and we'll figure out what we're gonna do with that circlet in the meantime." So they go to bed and everyone cycles through their night watches. Not too much happens during the night. Dariax is the first one on watch and he sees what he thinks might be Posca riding away on her horse away from the city in the middle of the night because he just sees a rider that has some red leather. And Posca, as we know, was wearing red leather. Orem was next. Not really anything eventful for him on his watch. He does kind of think about the box and kind of hears the skittering on the peripheral of his senses, but nothing else. Fern's next. Again, really nothing happens with her. But then she goes to wake up Opal, who is next, and we cut into Opal's dream. And she feels like she's awake and she hears the skittering and she kind of reminisces about the vision that she had earlier and sees the big spider leg again. And then she feels like a face is coming toward her in this dream. But it turns out to just be Ted, her twin sister. And Ted asks her, what are you doing with this evil object? Why didn't you throw it in the ocean? Um, what are you doing? And basically, Opal and Ted get into a big fight, which ultimately leads to Opal kind of becoming lucid in the dream and wrestling control of it away from her sister and is like, see ya, like I'm done with this. And Ted makes sure to remind her, and I think the exact words were, bitch, I am your magic. And so, like, good luck without me, basically, is what she says. Um, then Opal wakes up, her watch is uneventful, and she wakes up Dorian. Um, During his watch, his thoughts are consumed by the circlet, just like a lot of the other people had been. And on the edge of his awareness, he hears the skittering and the scratching. But then he hears a voice in a language he quite doesn't understand, Undercommon, and it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like a lullaby. He gets out his lute and tries to play with it, and by the time he's done, he no longer hears the skittering, and we're told that something is well pleased by his playing. Um, that's basically everything that happens. The party wakes up and they make their way back to the fire shari. That's where we kind of had the break in the episode, and we pick back up. They've made it there, and as they approach, a half orc woman runs out and greets Orem by name. And we find out that she is Lorcathar of the Fire Ashari. She invites them in and they discuss everything that's going on. Orem tells her of the residuum and wants her to get a message to the voice of the Tempest about what's happening so that she can tell her friends. He reveals that he was a guard and overheard, many interesting things during that time, and that's kind of why he thinks this may be important. They decide not to tell Lorcathar about the circlet for now, and Lorcathar begins to tell them about what they've been dealing with. Something has been happening with the land Thordak, the Cinder King, had touched in this area. It has been corrupted, and while they have been healing it, something seems to be pushing back, causing tremors and flares, and the elements have just basically been getting more chaotic. And a recent flare-up killed several of their fire tamers. Only 2 of them returned from this mission. And I'm probably going to say these wrong, but Gesso and Rayon, a non-binary halfling and a male elf, respectively. The party wants to speak to them, and Lorcathar goes to retrieve them. They come, and Jesho does all the talking, and the party realizes that they quickly have a lot in common. And it's here that it's revealed that the party too has been to this crater altogether, and they saw a lot of the same things that these fire tamers did. Jesho realizes that Mister, Fern's elemental is actually, or Fern's monkey is a fire elemental, and Fern explains how she reached in and used the energy of the crater to kind of like pull him out and just grab him. And Jesho reveals that when they were ambushed by these cinder slag elementals when they were in the crater, the ones that killed 7 of their people, these cinder slag elementals were created in the exact same way by a mysterious being. Dorian asks about this creature and describes a woman with wings and blazing wings and lava, and Gesso confirms that yeah, that's what we saw too. Um, a lot of mystery there, but Orem basically says, like I want to help you people, and the rest of the party's like, well, if he wants to help, we want to help. Um, Fern then feels a tremor in the earth that no one else does, and a short while later, a massive earthquake occurs. The party walks out of the tent to see like a surreal gray ashen sky, ash raining down, and a strange red like aurora borealis streaking across the sky, and a massive plateau, a mesa, had just formed where one hadn't been before. Um, Chaos is going on. A lot of the Ashari are running around and they do not know what to do. They eventually run into Lorcathar again, though, and she asks, hey, we don't know what's going on. Can you please help us figure out what is happening here? So they're like, yeah, we'll do it. And so they make their way to this new plateau and climb their way up, which proves to be pretty difficult. And also with this ash raining down, filling their lungs, they're at risk of getting points of exhaustion. The longer they are in this and the more they talk, the higher chance of it is. So as they're going, they eventually see a light in the distance, and when they approach it, they realize that this is a like broiling sigil in the ground at the top of this mesa. And sorry, so the party's trying to figure out what the heck this is, and Opal gets close to it and is like, well, let me spray some perfume near it and see what happens. But before she does that, to be safe, she's like, I cast shield on myself. But her magic does not work. So she's terrified by this and kind of retreats to reassess. Dariax decides to throw a rock at it to see what happens, and when he does, the rock melts down as soon as it get close to the sigil. And they're like, okay, um, yeah. And it's at this point that Fern notices that the sigil seems to be incomplete, and so Dariax suggests, hey, well, how about we just give Mister to it? And the party notices that Mister is completely ignoring them, and he is fixated on the rune. And he no longer has the form of a monkey. He is now just pure fire elemental. So something's going on with this in him. Um, Opal decides, hey, let's talk to it. And so she tries to communicate with the sigil, and it responds. But it turns out it's just Ted making fun of her, and Ted reveals that she is the one that has taken Opal's magic, not the rune. So she and Ted get into an argument, which baffles the whole party, as Opal is seemingly talking to herself. But they decide to hold that and talk about it later. They got more important things going on. So Fern decides to walk up and touch the rune, and as a fire druid, she's not bothered by the heat, but does notice that it is extremely hot. And nothing happens, but she does kind of feel at one with the fire. Again, it is suggested that maybe Mister could go in because he's fixated on it. He is a fire elemental. maybe there's something there. And Fern asks if that's what he wants, if he wants to go home. And he doesn't actually respond to that, but he is still just fixated on it. So they approach together, and when they reach the edge, Fern is kind of blown back by this massive force. And there, where Mr. stood, is now like this giant swirling ash elemental. So they enter combat with it and are fighting it. And then Dorian has, in my opinion, the MVP move of the whole session. And he casts Dissonant Whispers, which forces the enemy to flee away from you. And it is successful, and it causes Mister to step off the rune, which causes him to revert from that back to his normal form. Um, it's at this point, I had to mention this, that Dariax is like, now's our chance. And so Dariax still rushes to attack Mister, but he rolls a nat 1. And Fern is able to move Mister right out of the way at the last second. And in so doing, Dariax is stumbling and is going to fall into the sigil, but Orem helps him out, prevents that from happening. But his spear does get burned up in the process. So they exit the plateau and realize they basically had accomplished nothing, found out nothing. What do they do now? But they run into Lorcathar, tell her what they found. They actually draw the sigil for her to get her take on it. She doesn't recognize it, but says, "You know what? I know somebody that might. A rune child by the name of Sean Gilmore. Go find him in Amon. Do me this favor. Go find him in Amon. See if he can help us figure out what this is." And that's basically the end of the episode. But we do get a little post-credit scene. Um, and I'll just read that verbatim here. It is, "Head watches from a dark place, seething with frustration, love, and duty, but definitely frustration. She will cave. She will always protect her sister from the world, from herself, always." And that was the episode. And sorry for talking for like 50 straight minutes, but boom.
It's great, man.
Hopefully I didn't miss too much.
To break down 4 hours, you did a great job, man. You hit every detail that I thought was important. And it's tough to hit the nuance of the episode in just like a description of it. But like I said, I think you've nailed all the big moments. Now the question, it's interesting because like this was, so episode 1, I really kind of felt out of place in the sense of I was really kind of, when we recorded, it had been several days since, or a few days since we'd actually watched it. So a lot of it was fuzzy. I literally just finished this episode like 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
But I this time took down notes as things were happening. And I have so many thoughts, and I'm sure some of our listeners also have so many thoughts.
Yeah.
And so I'm not quite sure what's the best route for us to piece it together. And part of me, it's like, even like going through the recap, there were certain points where I was like, oh, that was really interesting. And here's what I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
So I have like these thoughts about like the actual content of the episode. And then I have like these more macro thoughts of the production, I guess, of it. Not really production. Not production. Production's the wrong word. Like the show as a critical role show, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe show's the wrong word, because I know Matt Mercer in the past, when he's gotten criticism, has been like, hey, this actually is not a show. These are friends playing D&D that we're sharing with other people. And so
yeah,
show's probably the wrong word, but
I know what you mean.
I have thoughts. Yeah. So I have like these out of world thoughts versus in the world. Okay, that's interesting detail. Okay, that's what's happening there. And I don't know how to piece it together for the sake of this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, just especially like we've already said, with such long content, so much to talk about. I think there's not really going to be like a clean order to things. I think we just talk about things, and one thing we do, and for the listeners out there, if you're checking this out on YouTube, we will have timestamps in the comments. So like if there's something specific you're hoping we talk about, check down there, and it'll usually take us maybe a couple days after this is uploaded, but they will be there. And so I think we should just, got something, let's talk about it, and we'll try to keep it logical, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, and also it's going to be tough. I don't want these deep dives to be as long as the Critical Role episode. So we probably won't hit on like every single detail. So if
Right.
you listeners, definitely if we missed something that you thought was really great or really awesome, feel free to tell us about it. But yeah, Will, I think that makes sense to go as logical as we can. So maybe a good starting point would be how the episode began, which is they've just stolen this residuum and they're on the run, so to speak. And I loved Orem's line. This would have been later. I'm already cutting ahead now because I was going to say I loved Orem's line of like, this is more of a walk and talk type of conversation because they were talking about like, how did you learn to tie people up? He's like, oh, all the girls know.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's probably walk and talk. Let's go.
That was great.
Yeah, I enjoyed the charming scene. I thought Abria did a great job playing the charmed character. Which what was his name again?
Arthur.
Arthur, yeah,
Is that right?
It was Arthur. And because the great thing about D&D is a lot of times what can happen in individual sessions is, or just speaking for myself, as a player, when it comes to like actions and combat, what you can actually do, how do you actually progress the momentum of whatever moment is happening, is we get really tied up with damaging cantrips and spells. Like, this is the move I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy it when there's a bit of flavor that's different than that.
Yeah, same here.
You have Dorian and Opal, who both cast charm on these two Thieves Guild people who've been tracking them. And you never really quite know how a DM is going to act out charm. And I loved how Arthur was like, "Oh, you're really cool, man. I'm so sorry about to kill all your friends. Like,
yeah,
I'm really bummed. We're gonna like kill everyone, but hey, don't worry about you. Like, we'll pretend like we didn't see you." And I just really appreciated that.
Yeah, me too. And I feel like now's as good a time as any, since you kind of just brought up that doing charm is kind of like a fun thing to do besides just Eldritch Blast or whatever it may be. So take this opportunity that I just gotta give Robbie and Amy praise for both having never played D&D before. They've just slotted right in, and especially Robbie. Not to take anything away from Amy, but like especially Robbie. I've just been so impressed by him. Both like he's a natural.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean he's a voice actor and he's a self-proclaimed like nerd. He's all into the video games and stuff. So I'm sure this is a very like smooth fit for him. But he's just been killing it.
Mm-hmm. And with Amy, there's a lot of excitement there of seeing someone play for the first time.
Yeah.
Of like the joy, and she's like, "Oh, wait, what?" Like that moment later when she says like, "Oh, maybe like a Spider King or something," and everyone's like, "Ah!" She's like, "Wait, there is a deity, there is something like that." Like, that's such a fun moment to be able to see as an audience of like, okay, that is someone who is discovering the fun of D&D, and we as the viewers, we get to see that happen. And so it's great seeing that energy and excitement from both of them for sure.
I love it. Man, so or go ahead if you had something.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so we have the charming thing that happens, and I just Matt Mercer, like anything he says, I'm just always like, yes, I love that. And speaking also on your comment of Dorian, of him casting Dissonant Whispers in that moment, or was it Dissonant Whispers or something else? I can't remember.
Yeah, at the end.
No, what did he cast when the larger Thieves Guild guy had grappled him?
Oh,
and he leaned back and he whispered. It was an attack, is what it was. And the person succeeded on the check, so they took half damage. But he gave the prime bard like response, which was, "I love hugs." Like, jokes on you.
Yeah.
So I was like, this guy's fitting his role so well. I mean, it's just great. It's fun to see it happen.
It is. And I forgot. I had forgotten about that moment with he was like shimmying out or whatever.
Yeah. Isn't it great to see like, or sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just about, if you're still on this, I was about to jump.
Well, I was just going to say in general, I'm really enjoying seeing every character's personality come out in different ways. And not not to keep you from jumping, but just on that, Fern being this druidic character who cares about wildlife and nature, her being like, "Do you think we can go back for the baby Ankeg?" At the start of the episode, and you could see Abria's face of like, pretty much like as the DM, no, like
Please don't.
you would die. Don't do that. But like, I don't know. Everyone's sliding into what their character would be like, how they would act, and they're really embracing like, this is who I am. So
Yes, that's like my favorite part of watching these extremely long form content is like seeing the player just like really find what their character, like who that their character is gonna be, and just really seeing that like get fleshed out.
mhm.
Yeah, 100% agreed, bro. But I wanted them to go get the Ankeg so bad. I wanted that to happen because I just wanted to see where that was gonna lead, and if like they
It-
would maybe keep it or just
yeah.
what.
Do you think that? Because I'm thinking about this like a couple of ways. Like, I think there's sometimes like a player. Sometimes I think players say things that they know they can't do. Like, I think Ashley Johnson probably knows, like, hey, we're not going to go back, but it's still important to like show that, hey, my character would still want to do something like this.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, the other thing I was thinking that I wonder if this wasn't a limited run in terms of 8 episodes, if there be more freedom to explore and discover. Because it feels like with like Matt Mercer, for example, in a campaign, this is stretching, so many episodes that although the plot line is somewhat, it's there's so much more wiggle room because it's like, oh, if we don't get right to the next big moment, it's no big deal because we still have several months of this to go.
Right.
We know with this show there's only 8 episodes. So I wonder also if that's a little bit in play of like, yes, you could go back, but like we've moved on from that. So
Yeah. Yeah, that is
and no
interesting.
one said that. I mean, I'm just
Right.
sort of,
That's a good point. And it just this feels like a natural segue to another thing I wanted to talk about. It's just that we kind of mentioned it in the first episode, but it's just so crazy to me that like they have been given a vestige of divergence at level 2, and with what we got this episode, there seems to be some pretty crazy things going on, like as far as the elemental planes might be acting up. Like we'll talk more on, I guess, what we think's happening on the whole, but like it seems like a very big problem, and it's like this is a level 2 party and there's only 8 episodes, so it's not like they're gonna get level 20 in a month from now. So like I'm just curious on like what the central conflict's going to be and how this is going to work out. And I mean, for all we know, maybe they do something weird and they're like, oh hey, by the way, you're now level 8. I don't know how that would work or how they would make that make sense, but I've been thinking about that.
yeah. And this episode made me think, and I think I said this in the first episode, that okay, hey, they're telling a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. I don't know if I fully believe that anymore.
In what
Because
way?
in the way that I wonder if this is maybe an introduction to these characters and there'll be some central plot that gets resolved, but it isn't. So for example, maybe this whole fire elemental thing becomes like the main sticking point of the story, and they resolve it over the next several episodes, and then it's like as a sort of a cliffhanger, hey, we still have this circlet to deal with, or maybe something happens with the circlet, I don't know. And maybe they're setting up for another run later down the road when there's a gap or when there's a need for a one shot, like when the Critical Role team's maybe taking a week off. Hey, yeah, we're going to bring them back and progress the story, or maybe we're going to intertwine them a bit and they're going to run concurrently. I have no idea. It just seems like there's so much happening now that I'm like, yeah, how does this get resolved in the next 6 episodes? And to your point, I'm like, it's a level 2 party. I don't think I've ever been in a D&D campaign myself that's made it past level 5, before it falls apart. And I think I read a statistic that it was something like 80% of D&D players never make it to level 10. So like, I don't know what level 20 looks like. I don't know what it feels like. I have no clue whatsoever. but I do wonder, okay, they're level 2, they're still level 2. What does the next 6 episodes look like in terms of acquired power, in terms of player progression? That I have no idea.
Yeah, and I think on your point of like they could keep like using this past the 8 episode mark, down the road or whatever. I think that, I mean, obviously, I think EXU is going to be a series for the Critical Role brand. Like, you know, I'm not saying it's these same 5 people, but I think that there's going to be um many seasons, if that's the right word, of EXU, but it might be completely different stuff each time. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Like it's all about when they like announced it, it's all about like giving other storytellers a chance to like use Matt's world and stuff. So that to me implied that like, hey, and it might be like we might not get another one until campaign three's over, but I doubt it'd be that long. But
Mhm.
um, so it might be years till we get the next one. But I could easily see it being like, hey, a new GM, maybe a new slate of players, and I don't know. But I'm kind of getting off track. But the interesting thing, and like you said, is that they might not get all resolved. Is that this is Matt's world, and it's the same world that we've seen in campaign 1 and 2, and presumably 3. They haven't made any big announcements like that there would be taking a step away from that. So the things that are happening in EXU have consequences beyond EXU, if
Mhm.
only because it's still Exandria. Like maybe
Right.
this is just a what's the word, like a plot thread, or like a seed planted of something that
Mhm.
might happen in campaign 3 that doesn't involve any of this crew that we're like with right now. But maybe the elemental
Mhm.
planes explode, and like I don't know. But so yeah, it's just interesting to try to think of like what will be their central conflict or enemy, and how will that get resolved, especially with a level 2 party. So like it's just
Mhm.
hard to reconcile like this chaos that we're seeing is happening that has implications for the world at whole, yet knowing that we only have 6 episodes left and they're level 2. So like
Mhm.
how's that going to get reconciled? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. And definitely, I think I said this in the last episode. It feels like the stakes are getting higher and higher, especially as they went from, so they leave town, they go and make camp, and this box, which I think I missed the detail that they had put it back in a box. But this box that's holding the circlet it's very the easiest way for me to describe it was Lord of the Rings esque with the One Ring. It's
Yeah.
calling to them. It's almost I got like sort of like corrupting them type vibes, especially when Ted said it's going to make you evil,
Mm-hmm.
which I feel like that was very intentional. Um, and I'm just enjoying like their uneasiness around it, or I say they, for the most part, Orem and uh, Dorian, like the descriptions of it, the world building of it, so to speak, in the sense
Mm-hmm.
of the skittering of spiders,
Ooh.
um, the huge leg coming out.
No.
That was really cool to me. I got a serious vibe of the Diablo 3 announcement trailer where Leah is having like this vision and Asmodeon's leg, spider leg, basically comes out and slams like right in front of her.
Ooh.
That's what I kind of envisioned, was like this person, Opal, totally out of her element, naive, no business with this as a level 2 person,
Yeah.
and the weightiness of what's happening here. And especially moving from that to Orm talking about the stories he was told as a kid. Um, Dorian had an interesting comment. He said, "We told stories, ancient stories, before my people fell." And it was
Yes.
weird how nobody was like, "Okay, wait, what happened to your people?" Like, I guess maybe it was common knowledge about maybe the air genasi. I wasn't really quite sure. I don't know enough about campaigns 1 and 2. I was hoping maybe you had an insight, because I haven't, also, since I just finished the episode, I haven't had a lot of time to like dig in and read. What do you think is going on there?
Okay, I'm glad you said that because, and again, shout out to the Critical Role Discord. You happen to be watching this and you're from there, hit us up. we would love to talk about any fun theories or questions you guys might have. But I went in there and asked that, and I did have somebody ask that exact same question that you did. Give him credit real quick, Mr. Hoffer. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but he was saying that his theory on that is that let me just read exactly what he said. He said is the reason Dorian said that his people fell is because the Air Genasi had a floating city that crashed at some point, probably around the same time as the others. And um, there are floating cities in Exandria, or rather, there used to be,
Hmm.
but they all came crashing down. And I don't want to get into too, you know, we didn't give our spoiler disclaimer in this episode yet, but I've seen all campaign 1 and 2, so as far as spoilers go with that stuff, I'll only kind of speak within the bounds that EXU is operating in.
Hmm.
So because of that, I don't want to go too much into the other stuff about the floating cities, but I thought that was interesting because that could be true. But I don't. There hasn't really been anything about Air Genasi history or mythology in any Critical Role so far. So really, nothing's really known about Air
Okay.
Genasi as far as like Matt knows, and that's about it. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
I thought it was. This makes sense because I thought he was saying like my people fell, like as in we were wiped out or something. And you're saying like a literal event happened where there were floating cities that literally fell.
Yes, but
Okay.
so that's Mr. Hoffer's theory. I like that theory.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm team that's what he meant or not, because I think it could also be what you said, that maybe
Yeah.
like
Okay.
the dynasty of Air Genasi fell. And actually, on that point, I think there's something going on with Dorian. In episode 1, I forget what it was, but somebody pointed out like, "Oh, you're a rich kid. I can tell." There was some moment like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but then so that and now this before my people fell, I'm almost, maybe even getting like royalty vibes from him. Like
Mm,
if not current, then like maybe if fell does mean that like they once were prominent and now aren't. Maybe he's from a lineage that used to be, but
yeah.
he does seem to have money. He does
Yeah.
seem to have that kind of air about him. So
Well, and he does have that line in the introduction where he says, I'm Dorian. I can't remember his last name, but I'm Dorian. That's my stage name. And Liam's like, oh, your stage name, huh? And I don't know if people read too much into that to mean like it's this faux personality, like this is who he's presented himself as,
yeah,
or if literally he was just saying like my performing person
yeah, like
is.
because I'm on D&D, like
Exactly.
yeah,
So I haven't really put too much thought into it of like, oh my gosh, he's on the run or he's in hiding, which could totally be true, other than just it's just an interesting detail that, I have filed that away about his character on I wonder where his character is going to go.
yeah,
And I think that's a little bit of what's tough too, because we're talking about these characters that we're starting to fall in love with. Like, oh, that's an interesting detail. And again, it all has to doesn't have to. I think as a viewer, we all want certain levels of like satisfaction and like neat neat a bow tie as can be done in the
right,
next 6 episodes.
right.
I'm very optimistic, but I am curious also. And maybe they won't. I mean, they can't address everything, and maybe that'll be the fun after Exandria Unlimited is over. Is we'll be like,
Yeah, like
okay, yeah,
a
let's still talk about what happens next. So
Yeah, and if there are like no plans to revisit those characters ever, which I hope there are, but if there aren't, something they usually do is like can't called campaign wrap ups. So we might get to have like if they are done, then we might get to have like a question and answer session with everybody. And so like Robbie could maybe answer some of those questions, at least, from what his mind, like what he thought the character was. So I always
mhm.
love that about Critical Role at the end is getting to dive into Matt's brain and find out everything.
Yeah, I haven't
Um,
got to experience that yet, but that would be a cool thing as the season wraps up.
a show, and we're not really on it anymore, but we kind of are. So I wanted to. You're talking about the Spider Queen and the myths, and Orem talking about it. I was so happy that when they made those religion checks, that they rolled high enough to like get us that information. Because like, oh, this could be so cool. Like I want to hear about the betrayer gods and the Spider Queen.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, it has betrayer gods. Is that language from C1 or C2?
Yes, it's like the mythology and like the legend of like the world. So like it yes. Now I'm not uh, there's not really spoilers here, but I still just want to be careful with how I say things. But yeah, it is known like mythology, and essentially there's like the prime deities, and like at the beginning of not time necessarily, but like the beginning of history, um they like created men and created living things and lived together with them, and all was well. And there are these things called primordials, which are like these ancient like elemental spirits or whatever you want to call it, and they kind of like rose up out of the earth and were like they fought with the gods and the
Mhm.
mortals. And the betrayer gods are the gods that did not help in that fight. They were like, we're out, you know, and they were like, they're all evil and stuff. Um, so that's just a quick 411 on what a betrayer god is. They're basically the ones that kind of abandoned humanity and um, did evil stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. They're like I need to like I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble if I do too much like other games or movies references. Because we've done Lord of the Rings, we've done Diablo 3. I was like, oh, this is like the Sargeras to the Pantheon,
Yeah.
you know? But that's how I connect things, I guess. But yeah, and I don't know, has the Spider Queen, does she have a name?
She does. Again, Spider Queen has never showed up in
Okay.
Critical Role,
I was
but I
gonna
think her
ask,
name
is
is
it
like
there?
Lolith or something like that. I'm probably
Okay.
saying it wrong, but
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
So, and again, apologies for people who maybe already know this. They're like, oh, it's this, and here's the whole history. We literally just watched the episode, so we haven't done as much of a deep dive. Um, and for me, having not seen Critical 1 and 2, I'm just like discovering this as we're going.
Yeah. And what's really cool to me is that so, you know, campaign 1 was a whole story, done, finished. We started campaign 2, which takes place a few decades later. And there are Easter eggs, there are illusions, but for the most part, there wasn't too much of a connection. One, I mean, the fact that it's been a few decades later, but it's just crazy to me that because that's how Matt kind of handled it. You know, he wanted this to be its own thing and didn't want it to be overshadowed by things that happened in the first one. That he didn't tread there really. But
Mhm.
here in EXU, we are getting so many huge connections to campaign
Mm.
one. It's crazy. Like Keyleth has been name dropped in episode one when I was talking about a character and I said I'll just call her Kay. That's who I was referring to. I thought that that might be the she Orem kept referring to, and I guess it was. But yeah, then
Pixelists do it again.
but it was just really cool to see them like know who she is and like know the history of Vox Machina, which is the name of the team from campaign one, and like hear about these vestiges of divergence. And I don't remember who said it. I think it was Fern, but I'm not sure. But she was like, "Oh yeah, I know about Keyleth and all of Vox Machina. Like my grandmother told me about them." Or something like that. And so that got me going. I was like, wait, who the heck is her grandma? And so I'm wondering if that's some sort of like Easter egg.
Mm.
Um,
Do you think her grandma might be someone from campaign 1?
maybe. I if it is, I think it's like a small thing, but
Yeah,
I
okay.
feel like there's got to be some connection there, but maybe not. I have a theory, and I won't say it, but I'll just announce the theory part in case I can reveal it later. I have a theory about the gate that she traveled through, and so interested to see if we get any more information about that.
Yeah, maybe
Um,
if we can talk about that maybe even now, because this is around the campfire that she's sort of telling her origin story, so to speak. And because they're also talking about where they could take the circlet. And right
right.
now they're planning to go to the Fire Genasi because they're taking the residuum there. But Fern has this moment, which was so interesting to me, where she remembers basically I don't know how you took it. I took it as like a planted memory. Like this is what actually happened versus no, what actually happened, which is really cool that we had sort of, and I loved how Abria described it of like like you see almost like the edges of the memory, and you can peel it away.
Yeah, that was such a great like description. So
Yeah, it
vivid.
really was. And so we get introduced to her grandmother, and she's suggesting that maybe we could take it to her.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Feywild, and I think, and again, I'm not super familiar with the world of Exandria, so like I'm piecing together details of the world as I'm listening.
Right.
But I think Dariak says it's near Zephyr, or where he's from is in Zephyr, or something like that. Or maybe the Feywild is in Zephyr.
Was it Zephra?
Zephra, I think that's right.
Is
I
that
wrote down Zephyr, but I may have misheard it.
okay? Because I don't explicitly remember this moment you're talking about, so I'm not trying to say what happened. But I do know Zephra is the Arashari home, so that would be where Orem is from. And I don't.
Interesting.
So the Feywild is like a different dimension,
Right.
different plane of existence.
Right.
So Zephra is in Exandria. So I I don't know enough to know about how like maybe like maybe there's a portal near Zephra that leads to the Feywild, but like they're on two different planes of existence. So I don't know what he would have meant by Zephra's close to
Yeah,
it.
I'm just looking at my note, and it's when they're literally we're talking about Keyleth, and Orem says, and actually what's funny is Fern says, well, maybe, Keyleth has one, which I didn't know that. But I guess Keyleth has a vest, and she says, well, Keyleth
Yeah.
has one, maybe we should have one. And Orem says, well, if it belongs to the Spider Queen, it might be incredibly dangerous. So Fern says, well, then maybe we should go to the Feywild to see my grandmother. And Dirac says, oh yeah, that's near, and again, I wrote Zephyr. I think I should have written Zephra. And he says, yeah, it's near Zephra, which is where I'm from. He says, but it's farther from where we're heading. And then he says, but maybe that's a good thing because we're trying to get as far from Iman as we can. So maybe we should go that way. But then he goes back and says, then again, maybe we should just sell it, and we sell it to a third party, and we'd tell the Thieves Guild like, hey, we didn't realize. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, so
well, maybe maybe Zephyr is like a different place then, because it also doesn't make sense that he said I'm from there, because I don't think Dariax would be from Zephra.
Yeah, okay.
So maybe I'm just I shouldn't have corrected you there. Maybe Zephyr is just its own thing that is
maybe
not
someone's
Zephra.
listening and they're like, you idiots, this is what he said, and it's not at all what either of you are saying. I don't know. I think regardless, what's really cool about that scene is it made me a bit untrusting of the grandmother, in the sense of I couldn't tell if she was telling the authentic memory, as she was careful in her words, or I say careful. I read her words deliberately of she was led by her grandmother to this stone presumable portal or gate. Yeah. And then she woke up in what was the place called? Singorn, and walked from there to Iman, and which I wasn't clear if they walked a long way to the stone gate and then she walked even more, or if the stone gate was near her home and then it was a long walk to Iman. But was being led there. And then there were some thoughts that, we know that they were in the crater at some point. This was all very confusing to me because it seemed like, and you had a great insight from the last episode, which is what's up with the amnesia. And I was like, well, they just partied, they just wrote it off. And you were like, yeah, but maybe not. Maybe there's something happening here. And they seem to, or at least Dorian seems to have this remembrance of, actually, I guess that's later when they're talking to the fire genasi.
Yeah. I was going to say, pause on that because I want to talk more about I want to see if I can shed some light on the gate thing for you, and not that I know the answers, but there are some interesting things here that might kind of make a little more sense. Is that the way the Feywild works is strange, and it kind of messes with your memory and time. So I think those were kind of all elements at play with the fact that she kind of had to peel back the thing, and probably only because she got a natural 20, I think it was. But so time passes differently there. And like when you go to, like, if you're leaving the
Loki plug.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Check out our Loki discussion. So like when you exit, at least for the rules in Matt's world, which that's what we're in, so I'm assuming it's the same here. like when you leave the Feywild and come back to a different plane of existence, there is a chance that one, you just will completely forget everything that you did while in the Feywild. So you just like your memory would be wiped. But two, also like a lot of time could have passed. Like you could like if I stepped through a portal into the Feywild, stayed there for 1 second and stepped back, it could be like a month later. So that the
Hmm.
time dilation thing is
Yeah.
I
Okay.
interpreted the I walked for a long time, like forever, but also a second. That's what I interpreted was like maybe like the time dilation of the passing through this portal or something. Um, that's what I got there. But the memory thing is interesting because it's not that she just forgot. Like you said, it was like almost a memory had been implanted to be like, this is what happened, not this. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Like a cover up almost.
Hmm.
Whereas the rules of the Feywild, at least that I'm familiar with, that isn't what happened. You just straight up forget.
Right.
So the fact that she remembered but just remembered something else makes me think maybe foul play was involved, or maybe not foul play, but like maybe her grandma
Hmm.
enchanted her for some reason to not have to remember. I don't know.
Well, isn't in I don't want to. We'll get to this in a little bit, but just pulling into the fact that she could reach her hand into the sigil, into the fissure, and not be like melted away. Basically,
Right.
I think
And
that
touch
she was
Mister.
yeah, right. She was a like a wild spirit or something like that. Was her or well, I can't remember, like a fire something.
Wildfire Druid. Is that what you're looking
Thank you.
for? Yeah.
Wildfire. Thank you. So it's a type of druid that she is,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I can't remember if this was in the show or if I read this or what. Because again, it's just so much just happened in this episode, so it's hard for me to piece everything together. But we know they eventually go to the crater, and she pulls Mister out of these, I guess, fissures that are in the crater. Is it possible she was sent for a very deliberate purpose of dealing with the crater?
That's a really interesting theory. Like, yeah, I mean, it could be, right? I mean, she just I don't know if she did she give any explanation or she's just like I just like felt compelled to reach down and
I think she said she
grab.
just yeah, I think that's how she described it exactly. Was she felt this something in the ground and reached in, and out came Mister.
Yeah, I really like that theory because it does seem like there is some grand mystery here that we are not privy to yet. And I guess let's
Hmm.
just and if you cool to move here now?
Yeah, yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
So, because all right, they're missing a week. You know, they kind of alluded to it in the first episode. They didn't tread too much on it, so I was kind of confused. Because, like you said, they'd been partying. Like, was it just like a funny thing they were saying? Like, I can't even remember last week. But it seems like they are literally like all have amnesia for almost a week, and
Hmm.
the only thing they remember, and I can't tell if this is at the beginning of the week, like so they have a memory, then there's 6 days of black, and then they're here, or there's like 6 days of black, and the start of the memory is the crater thing, because I think they said they just remember like footsteps from the crater leading to something, and like that was like
Hmm.
the first memory they had.
Hmm.
So what's going on there? Why are these people even together? Why were they all together in the crater? Like what were
Hmm.
they doing? And if it is because Fern, had some mission, whatever it may be, like to go get Mister to go inspect it or whatever, why is everyone else there? They
Right.
didn't know each other before this. So like why would these random five strangers?
Presumably.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't, this isn't really even leading toward a question. I guess I'm just trying to like lay out the groundwork for what we know, but like,
Yeah.
what's going on there?
It was great your comment of it was funny because when you were like, "What's up with them not remembering 6 out of 7 days?" I remember thinking like, "Well, I think maybe you might be reaching for something. I don't know if that's anything." And us finding out that actually something big did happen prior to episode one. First of all, props to you, and second of all, that was very jarring as a viewer because it was seemingly a big reveal that didn't get much attention.
Yeah.
Like Dorian is sort of like, yeah, there was a figure, and I'd actually missed those details of like this. I think of a lava lady,
Yeah,
but a
basically.
shadowy figure with like molten wings or something. And it was weird that they weren't like, okay, wait a second. So what were we all doing? It was just kind of like, oh yeah. And then they moved on from it. And so as the viewer, it was like, okay, did I just like totally miss something here? Like what is even happening?
Right.
Clearly something did happen. And the only reason why I think Fern's present is missional-esque is her phrasing of my grandma was leading me, was taking me somewhere almost.
Mm.
And maybe somehow they got looped in for the ride. I don't really know.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it's like you said, there was no show of it. It was no reveal, which is like it's hard to catch because of that. But I actually really like it because it's earnest, right? Like they had this experience and they're obviously keeping it very close to the vest. Like they're not even talking about it amongst themselves, until it comes up. But like, did it seemed to me that like Dorian wasn't just remembering that out of the amnesia. It seems to me like that's one thing that he did remember already, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. Maybe it was inconsequential in the sense of addressing it because it's already been like a well understood, like, yeah, he has that memory. And then and DRX does say, I'm not following any of this. I don't got any of this. I don't understand any of this. I think it was that conversation at least. And so, maybe that's also part of it is like, okay, yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, it seems like something important down there happened again. Like, why were they even there? And they apparently saw this same lady who reached down and used the energy to create these cinder slag elementals that killed 7 people. So why did when our party see this lady, did they fight? Did they survive? Did they not fight? Like,
yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And maybe they lost, and this is like the townhouses where they've been recovering over the last, I guess they'd have more like noticeable injuries or things like that. Or I just wonder if like maybe they were actually recovering and maybe they aren't even level 2. Maybe they just coming away, they've sort of it's like the classic game sequel where like the character who's like become very powerful in a previous game has same thing with like Breath of the Wild. You are kind of knocked out of commission or something happens and you're back on this journey of
yeah, like,
I don't know.
yeah, like maybe even the amnesia has like robbed them of their skills, you know what I'm saying? Like
It could also explain like a faster leveling process in 8 episodes.
right,
I don't know.
like, bro, and this is off the wall crazy, but it's a thought that entered my mind while you were talking. Because of the grandma thing you said too, that like I'm not. So Fern is a wildfire druid, and that's why she doesn't get burned, right? And she did the same thing that this lady did. What if that lady was also a wildfire druid? Maybe even her grandma. I'm not necessarily saying that, but maybe a wildfire druid, maybe, and that's why she could do this. But they have amnesia, seemingly. Again, unless that's just code word, and us as the audience are not being revealed for some reason, but they seemingly have amnesia. Modify memory is a spell in D&D, and so perhaps like a powerful being, like if they did confront this lady or they whatever they were doing there, like maybe they all had their minds wiped like by a powerful spellcaster. And the connection that had the eureka moment is Fern has a modified memory of her freaking travel through the gate. So like
Right.
maybe whoever did that, be it the grandma or be it somebody else, also modified this whole crew's memory.
But to me, I interpret that as like, why not just kill them? And so I assume it was for their own benefit, like for their protection. And so that's why, this person, the shadowy figure, is being a bit framed as like this mysterious evil character. Maybe that person's presence was misinterpreted by the fire genasi as being sort of like the source of the chaos, and maybe it's actually someone who was trying to protect them, or I don't know. Because I mean, again, you think about, okay, well, if this character facilitated this event, these flare-ups or what have you that killed so many of the Genasi squad, how did this group of level 2 adventurers get out relatively unscathed?
I don't know. That is like the grand mystery though, and I really like the idea that maybe they're not level 2 and they are, like you said, like be it the amnesia or be it whatever, just have kind of like forgotten. And like we
Mhm.
like you said, like maybe there will be a moment where they are
Mhm.
eureka moment and it's like, all right, you guys are level 15 again now, and you'd be like, what? And so
Yeah,
then
yeah.
maybe the stakes could, that would kind of make more sense with the stakes we've been presented, so that would be interesting.
Yeah, or and maybe not even a moment where it's like now you're level 15. Maybe it's like, hey, now you're level 4. And people
Hmm.
on like Reddit are like, what the heck? This is way faster than it's supposed to be. And there's like, yeah, that's your level 4. Oh, now you're level 6. Oh, now you're level
Yeah.
9. I don't know. I have no idea. Part of me wonders if that would be a working theory since we're already through episode 2 and there's still level 2. And so I'm thinking, okay, if there was going to be an accelerated leveling, I would feel like it maybe would already be happening or in
Hmm.
play, but we'll see for episode 3. I do want to ask you a bit of a history check on
Let me get my dice.
on this, because I, having not played or watched campaign 1 or 2, I'm hearing name dropping and I'm not familiar with, okay, is this something?
Hmm.
So we have the crater in the center of Iman. They're heading to see the fire genasi, who my interpretation is that they're sort of watching over the scar of the Cinder King. My understanding is
Yes.
that these were both caused by the same, because when they're talking to what was the half orc's name?
Locathar? Locathar?
Lorcathar. Lorcathar basically explains that Thordak,
Thordak, the Cinder
Thordak
King.
had like, these were like the two places that he left his mark, and it's corrupted, and fire elementals come out of it, and their job's sort of to watch over it and keep it um, at bay. And this flare up has happened now. There's earthquakes, there's tremors, and it's like, and even this character says basically we think something unseen is sort of re-agitating, reactivating, and even empowering these elementals.
Yeah.
Who? First question: who the heck is Thordak? Is this someone from a previous campaign?
Yes. Thordak is from campaign 1. He is a dragon, a ancient red dragon, and he, so again, I'm not going to go into anything that has not been touched already on in the show, but so what you need to know is he attacked him on at some point, and his crater is where Thordak's crater, which is inside the city in the Cloud Top district, where I think that's where Orem was at the very beginning of the first episode. He was walking around there, and sorry, but now I'm remembering things. I think that's where he might have said like that was his first memory of like the footsteps from the crater or something like that. Anyway, um, so that's where Thordak, when he was in Iman, like that's where he like made his lair, you know. So the crater was where he like resided. Um, the
But like,
scar. Go ahead.
did people live there at the time? Like, that's where it kind of throws me too. Is like, was it like relatively peaceful at some point, and then only recently have these flare ups been happening? Because I'm just trying to wrap my head around a crater with elementals in it that have killed fire genasi, and yet there's a town of people like all around it who are just like, hey, what do you want for dinner tonight? I don't know.
So Iman, normal city. Thordak attacked it and like made it his home at a time. He is no longer there, but the remnants of his presence are. So you know, it wasn't just like that they built this city around him or anything. Like it was just a normal
Yeah,
city, and then one day he came and crashed
yeah,
in.
okay.
Uh so my understanding was that, you know, she said like people are starting to move back in. I don't want them to. So I imagine just like ever since his thing, like that area of the town has probably been like kind of quarantined off. But I
Yeah,
guess
okay.
people are now starting to move back. But so that's the crater. The scar is like he's a dragon. I think he like kind of torched like the earth, or like, you know, kind of just raised the land.
It makes sense.
Razed.
Yeah,
Um,
because they called it the petrified forest. So that
mhm.
makes sense of like intense heat that petrified it.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
think that's where he kind of like just a site of like a massive attack of his.
Okay.
Did
Okay,
that
this makes
answer your
sense then.
questions?
No, totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was like, Who the heck is this guy and what's going on here? Okay, so then they think someone is presumably embracing, I guess, the corruption of this area, and now we have the flare up happening, and it's actually what causes the fire genasi to be pretty disinterested in Orum's news of, hey, we have this residuum, like this is a big deal. And they're kind of like, hey, we're a little busy right now because we have this flare up, we have these elementals, it's killing our people, it's chaotic, and which that also threw me a little bit because I guess what I was expecting was we have residuum, and they're like, oh my gosh, what, you have residuum? But it was like, okay, yeah, great. Hey, this is pretty serious right now. And it's obviously it's the catalyst for the rest of the episode, which is, a massive earthquake happens.
Yeah. And like residuum is very powerful, and it's worth a lot of money. But like I mean, especially for someone like Lorcathar, who we never really got the reveal on if she's like the top dog of that area, but it seems like she was at least in charge of some things. But I think it's just kind of below her pay grade. She's like, okay, you've got some stolen goods, like, and it didn't involve the fire Ashari specifically. It was from the air. So I mean, I think it's just more important things were happening. But yeah, I just didn't want to give you the wrong idea that like while residuum is very precious and powerful and worth a lot of money, it's not like a vestige of divergence. Like it wouldn't warrant that type of reaction out of someone.
Residuum, you mean vibranium?
Unobtainium.
Yeah,
that part was great.
Club. Yeah, that's great. Well, so the episode, definitely the second half of it was like, holy crap, like what's going to happen here? Because right after this conversation, this earthquake happens, the sky kind of looks like it's on fire, ash is falling from the sky, and they basically eventually find themselves to this fiery flaming sigil, which I was so curious. I was like, okay, what's happening here? Like what? The sigil was almost like a spot was being marked, like a stamp. And yet I was expecting like a Balrog or something to come out of it. I don't know. I still have a lot of questions, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, me too. I wonder what it is. I think somebody in the episode, I forget who, maybe speculated it was a portal or like a door. Or did somebody say that, or am I making that up?
I don't remember. I definitely was nervous though, as to like someone, I know DMs joke a lot about their stupid characters in their games. I was worried that, like Dariax would be like, yeah, I'll go in there, and then you get like melted.
Yeah.
So I did like it's not fair to call it a bait and switch, but I thought the sigil itself like emanated this like magical immunity. And so I liked how Opal's sister, which I couldn't tell at first. I thought she was like talking to her. It was almost like this very like flavorful version of sending or message, where they were like talking across a really long distance. But I don't know enough about that spell. And we found out in the post credits that it seems like the sister is the way she described it, like from a dark place or a lowly place. I got serious like Get Out vibes of the character, they're body snatching, right? And so, sorry, spoilers for those who haven't seen the movie. It's been 8 years. But that's how they describe it when they've been body snatched, is I was in the sunken place, and it's this dark place. And so for me, I read that as Ted is maybe an alter ego, or a maybe it's part of her personality that is like fragmented in her mind, but yet still really, maybe it's like if Opal is naive and a bit arrogant and selfish, kind of like a spoiled brat a little bit. Maybe Ted is this other version that's still part of her whole personality, that has more maturity. And I don't know, but she says it's my twin sister,
right?
And so I wonder, I don't know really what I'm wondering, other than What's going on here?
Yeah, what is going on there? And I love that fake out too. I thought that was really clever of Abria to do
Hmm.
that because I think that's what everyone. I don't think anyone was thinking it was Ted. You know, we thought
Hmm.
like, oh, this magic doesn't work around this
Hmm.
thing. So, and I was just so great that she parlayed it into that moment where like Ted was just like, "You idiot!" Like
Hmm.
it's me. But yeah, what is going on there? And hopefully we get some answers since the party just saw her talking to herself and we're like, we're gonna talk about this later.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. Like and not only all those things you said, but like Ted is her seemingly her warlock patron. Like
Right.
she could take
Right.
away her magic and give it to her. So like, it, is it is it not really her sister, and it is this demonic powerful entity that has just like made it think that it's
Hmm.
her twin sister talking to her? I feel like
Oh, okay.
that might be more likely than like some crazy weirdness of like my twin sister's soul is absorbed in mine and
Yeah.
has
Okay.
powers.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I hadn't thought of that. So you think like Opal's even maybe she's been mind jarred in some way to now, yeah, it's my sister, but it's like, no, this person is maybe trying to get out, trying to control you. I don't know. But it's obviously important enough detail that the post credits scene focused in on it.
That is true because seemingly that's just us for the audience, right? Like we're just like that scene wouldn't have been manipulative because it wasn't for anyone. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
Ted in that scene wasn't talking to anyone. It was just kind of like her inner monologue
Right.
almost. That's a
Right.
great point because let me just look at exactly what she said again because it seems like based on that she really does care. Ted really does care for Opal.
Hmm.
So that would make me think that it's not just like an evil deity tricking her. What does she say? She says, Ted watches from a dark place, seething with frustration, love, and duty, but definitely
Hmm.
frustration. She will cave. She will always protect her sister, or her sister, from the world, from herself. Now, a couple things here. It's kind of confusing with the pronouns. She will cave. Is she talking about Ted says she will cave? So is she talking about Opal, maybe in their argument that they're having, or do you think there's like a deeper meaning there?
I think Abria needs a grammar lesson because we're using her and she, and I'm like, these are like sins in grammar that we're not supposed to do. And I can't, I don't know. I mean, it's obviously intentional. I'm just joking. But the love and duty thing is why I didn't go the nefarious route. Um, and so here's what's hard though is I'm thinking she was talking about her. Ted was talking about herself, love and duty, because it talks about seething out of frustration. But it could be frustration out. It could be thinking of Opal's love and duty. Um, I don't know. It's so hard to know like who is being referred to in this sentence in this description. But one thing we do come out from this is okay, clearly this character is not just a simple. There's a lot more complexity to it.
Yeah. And the second, not to get too in the weeds on this, but the second she's talking about herself, Ted, because she says she will always protect her sister from the world, from herself. So maybe that means the first she is also herself, and so she will cave. Maybe this is all about just the argument still, because she will cave, maybe meaning she'll cave and she'll give her powers back because she wants to protect her sister or whatever. But the from herself, that one's got me too. Like, she'll protect Opal from Opal, or she'll protect Opal from Ted. I don't know.
It's that part of the show we whip out the whiteboard and start to.
Yeah, that
I think it's
Charlie
like,
that
yeah,
Charlie Day
Pepe
meme.
Sylvia. Yeah, yeah. Who knows? Hopefully, we get some resolution in the next 6 episodes. Like I said, it's so pronounced that part of the fun of watching D&D is seeing these characters develop and come to life and figure out details about them. Um, the fact that we're focusing in on this feels like it's going to be an integral part to the story at some point.
Yeah,
I mean, it'd
and
have to be, right?
yeah, and just one final thing on this part is that here we get watches from a dark place, which, like you said, sunken place vibes, but Opal, I think it was this episode, it might have been episode one, at one point mentioned, like, I don't know where my sister is. She's probably just at home, like sitting on the porch. So, like,
Hmm.
in Opal's mind, her sister, like, Opal doesn't believe her sister's inside her. She still thinks her sister's out in the world somewhere, but yet they have this
Hmm.
connection or something. But to me, I don't, because of the dark place, I feel like that she's not. Like, she's either inside her, that Opal, and Opal doesn't realize that, or she's a different plane of existence because she's an evil
Well,
deity or something.
here's what should really throw you is the moment where she's looking at the box and she sees through it and sees the circlet,
Mm-hmm.
and we see the same description that we're used to of like darkness, skittering, whatever. But specifically for her, the sky goes black. It's almost like she steps into her own mental space, and it's very Spider Queen esque. But then her sister speaks up. So is it possible that her sister and the Spider Queen have similar backgrounds, or even is it possible her patron is the Spider Queen,
That is,
unbeknownst to her?
that is her sister. Like her sister's the Spider Queen.
Maybe her sister is the Spider Queen, and it's she's been manipulated into thinking that's my sister,
Hmm.
but it's not really the sister. Because I do know in like past D&D games, like Baldur's Gate, for example, when you come across, there is a Spider Queen esque character, and she's a manipulator. And so I'm totally like implanting my past
Yeah,
biases
yeah,
on what's happening here. But it's interesting that we think we're having a moment with the circlet, but actually it's the sister from a dark place who is talking with her.
yeah. I mean, that's
And maybe they're both just being merged for like a nice transition into here's the sister now. But for me, I just wonder, are there some similarities there in the sense of similar backgrounds, similar origins, maybe even similar person? I don't know.
that would be super interesting. That'd be crazy. I mean, it kind of makes sense with the things you said.
Clip it. Clip it.
The
You're watching this clip because we called it. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, we're gonna be blasting this out if that's true. Uh, but the only what she's if that's true, and then she probably would be a master manipulator, right? But so I was gonna say the only maybe counter to that, you could wipe it away by saying she's being manipulative, but she was saying like get rid of that, throw it in the ocean, like she was like advising her to ditch the thing, which if they were the same person, you think maybe she wouldn't be doing that, but maybe it was like
now
a
I'm
reverse
yeah.
psychology.
Now I'm totally Mephistoing going into this because it's like, yeah, maybe they're saying get rid of it because they're looking for it, they're trying to find it, they don't want them to have it anymore. So just like, hey, get rid of it. I don't know. Because we do it seems that the scene where they're at the campsite seems to imply there's a bit of franticness around. They're hearing horses speeding up and down the road. Dariax thinks he sees Pasca riding quickly in the distance. So to me, I interpret that to which maybe they're none the wiser about the circlet. Maybe it's just the residuum and they're just pissed off. But I get the sense that there's a bit of, especially the people. What was the ship called? The Blight
Blight
Star.
Star.
I'm assuming the people who shipped it originally. I can only assume there's a bit of panic around where is this? We have to find it. We have to track this down. And the people who killed the guards, or excuse me, the crew have to also be desperately thinking like we were almost there. Like, where is this?
Yeah, and who are those people? Because I don't really think they're nameless ones. Do you?
No, I think it was set up for the warehouse battle to seem like the same shadowy figures, and then it ended up being the Thieves Guild individuals. I don't think they're the same people. I think the original shadowy creature is some kind of shadowy creature that isn't corporal. Is that the word?
Corporeal, I think maybe.
Corporeal. Thank you. It's not corporeal enough to have actually gotten the item, but I am interpreting it as a totally different faction, force, whatever in this story so far.
I agree with that, especially since that like Posca didn't point them toward that. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
just happened to find that. Yeah, I don't know. I love I love the theory about the Spider Queen. Like I don't know if that'll be true, but it's very interesting because there's something going on there. So
Right.
with
Well,
old Ted.
and then them being asked to go back to Iman. I mean, I'm thinking like they did a lot to get out of there.
Yeah.
They didn't do that much, I guess, but now to take this item back to Iman, I'm curious to
Ooh.
see
Okay.
what happens there.
Yeah. No, I guess it's a good time to talk about it. So you wouldn't know this, but Sean Gilmore is a massive NPC from Campaign One. So
Okay.
that's it's
I wondered because Ashley Johnson's face was literally when it was name dropped, and I was like, I don't know who that is. So
yeah, I can't. I'm so interested to see what happens. Like, I'm imagining they're actually gonna find him and he's gonna show up. But I guess it's possible that like they don't actually interact with him for whatever reason.
hmm.
But I just one be really excited to see him again. It'll be weird to not hear Matt be the one that's doing it.
Hmm.
Because I assume it'll still be a Bria. I know I've seen some people saying like, I bet Matt'll just still play Gilmore, and I'm like, I don't think so. That would be
I don't think so
weird,
either.
you know.
Yeah, I don't think
So,
so.
um, yeah, it'll be. I kind of forgot what got me on this train. What were we talking about
We're
before
talking about
this?
going back to Iman because that's the mission: is go back
Oh,
to
right,
Iman.
right.
We need your help. Go ask him about the sigil.
So yeah, he's a rune child, so he might know about these runes. Which, oh
Wh-
yeah,
which- I didn't know what that meant. Being
it's
a rune
just
child.
like a what's the word? It's like in Matt's world, and maybe this exists in regular D&D too, but I'm not familiar enough with that to know. So like I don't know if Matt just took this and put it in his world or if Matt created it, but it's
Mhm.
not a class, but like it's like a history or like a background you can pick for like your
It's
character.
like an archetype almost.
Yeah, yeah. And so it just has to do with like his type of like being a mage or whatever.
Okay.
Um But so yeah, it'll be great to see him, interesting to see him, and I wonder getting his take on the circlet would be awesome, but I don't know if they'll trust him enough to like tell him
Hmm.
about it or show it to him. Um yeah, oh, and this reminds me, I think we started this but never even ended up talking. Well, we did a little bit, but what the freaking rune is anyway. You know what we think. Mentioned might be like a portal or a door or something, but the fact that it like created an entire and sorry, I'm kind of jumping here unless you had more to say about
Hmm.
Iman. Okay. The Oh No Plateau, as the episode is titled. Um, it to my understanding, the whole thing was seemingly to service that rune, right? Is that what you got from it? That like
Hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh.
and so if you think on a grand scale, I'm wondering like, is that one part of like a potential like entire like spell circle that's being created, like maybe across the world there's another one and like all up on these different places, and like I know the one that they saw here, Fern said it looked incomplete. So one, I wonder why, but two,
Yeah. I
what
wonder why
happens.
she thinks that.
Yeah, and what happens when it's complete, like, and is
Hmm.
it a standalone thing or are there other ones in the world, and if so, like that's very big implications I think for something that large, because like in D&D um like spellcasters create like runic transmutation circles and spell circles and stuff, and for a purpose obviously. So
Hmm.
like what would the purpose of one on this scale be? And since we're dealing with like these elemental planes and stuff, is it like a passageway for something to make its way from one plane to another, or I
I
don't
interpret
know.
it has to be something that's not in the world of Taldore, but is in another on another plane or the world of Exandria, excuse me,
Yeah.
because I don't envision like a subtly, roguish like massive, Golomag esque lava dude who's walking around like stamping the ground or something. The fact that the mesa came out of the earth, I think of it as like something trying to like almost like punch through or like get through, and the sigil is like the splitting of that spot.
Hmm.
It was a bit strange that when they arrived there, that Abria said you don't feel a sense of danger, because I'm thinking like, oh man, this is gonna get crazy. Instead, they don't feel that, but it is still like a bit unsettling. And what ended up happening, I thought a monster was going to come out. It didn't, but Mister stepping on the sigil, transforms into this creature that then fights them. So maybe it does have evil implications. I don't really know. I'm not sure where this is going.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously all has to be connected though, right? Like clearly whatever is doing this is the same thing that killed all those fire shari that the
Right.
party apparently also saw. And so
Right.
I don't know. I think it'd be really interesting if Fern was kind of a linchpin in all this, like you maybe speculated that like maybe she was sent there to do something, and maybe her getting mind wiped is what is like caused it to not happen yet. Like, like maybe she's an integral part and she's currently mind wiped, not even knowing what her purpose is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That'd be kind of weird though if she was like secretly kind of a bad guy.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
know.
hmm. Speaking of Fern, one thing that I wanted to mention to you that she said during the episode is it's when after it's at the end of the episode after Dariax attacks Mister, which was hilarious. He reveals that he got bit by a monkey when he was younger, so that's why he felt that way. Um, that was awesome. But Fern responds to that like, "Oh yeah, I've been bit by all sorts of monsters. I've probably died a lot of times," and that was just such a weird thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't
Yeah.
remember if they pointed it out, and like that was another thing that they're like, "We're gonna talk about that later," or not. But like, definitely struck my radar. I was like, "What?"
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't really tell if it was something like that or if they just. I feel like whenever I play in D&D and I drop like a little heavy breadcrumb like that, most of my friends just pass over it. They're just like, okay, cool. I'm like, when my wife died.
See
I'm
ya.
like, nice. Okay, so anyway. So maybe that's a little bit of what was happening. I don't know. I mean, it beats me. So,
Mysteries, mysteries, mysteries.
uh, well, any other parts of the episode that you wanted to talk about? Because I do want to talk about this other.
The meta.
Yeah, the meta of the show as a whole. And I have some thoughts there. Even I'd say some criticisms there. And I don't know if we're ready to talk about that yet, or if you have more you want to talk about within the constraints of what actually happened.
Yeah, let's do it. I have one other little thing, but then we can jump right into it. And this is just I think I forgot to mention this in the recap, but when Dariax moves the circlet to the new bag and his eyes go jet black.
Oh my
Like
god.
I can't wait to see like what happens there, but two, I just gotta give so much love to Matt. He's such a good player. And he had so many moments, but like right then, he's so like as a player, you would want to like react to that and be like, well, what's happening? What's happening? But he doesn't because no one told him that happened and he doesn't know because he's himself. So I just love the way he reacted to that. And I was like, why is no one telling him that his eyes are black? But he was so smart with it because like I forget who said what, but they're like, are you okay? And he's like, well, this earthquake just happened and this, I mean, but yeah, I'm okay for the most part. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
dang, you're so good at that role play because for me, or I just feel like it would be so easy to be like, whoa, my eyes are black, but no, he
Yeah,
instead
right.
didn't know that and smartly really played off like the dumb character.
And the other detail, yeah, being a dungeon master, probably knowing you probably shouldn't touch this, but
Yes.
fully in his player's shoes of like, hey, move it over to this satchel. Okay.
Yeah.
And he's like, I got it, man. Don't worry. Like eyes jet black. And it seems like it's permanent, or at least in the sense we've seen that, like even at the end when they're talking to the Genasi again, he makes a comment and Abria's like, yeah, he says that with eyes jet black still.
Yeah.
So, which is weird that no one's been like, dude, like, this is what's happened to you.
Yeah,
But maybe
why
we
has no
haven't had
one
a
told
moment
him?
yet. Yeah.
But bro,
So,
last thing on that, I kind of really hope somebody puts it on. I just want to know what happens.
oh my gosh. I can't even. I'm like, no, don't put it on. I mean, I think if someone puts it on, it would be him. He'd be like,
Yeah.
guys, this is so dumb. Like, this is nothing. And then just boop. Which
Or if your theory's right, maybe Ted's like, hey, Opal. God.
I don't know. It's crazy.
All right. Yeah, I
Well,
mean, I'm sure there's stuff that I'm forgetting, but I think we can move on over if you're ready.
okay. Yeah. I looked at my notes and I feel like I've hit most of the things that I wanted to talk about in the episode. So I'm speaking only for myself. So like, Will, I know you and I haven't talked about this. And we have made a couple of comments on, this is different. This is different from like campaigns, and also being appreciative of everyone's different style. It's a different crew. I really enjoyed this episode. I felt like I was sitting in on someone's like homebrew, like I'm in their living room watching a bunch of people play D&D.
Yeah.
I do have some concerns about the critical role-esque boundaries of what's happening. And a couple things I think about with this is, and I call them concerns because I wouldn't fully call them like criticisms, because like who am I to like critique the show? But there's things that I think, okay, and I mentioned this a little bit at the start of like, okay, where does this exactly go in the next 6 episodes? It felt really good as an individual episode, like being in it. In the meta of like the whole like enjoying Critical Role, I felt more whelmed. And part of that is I'm having a tough time as an audience person grasping on to where is this going and what is the theme of this. And here's what I mean by this. Theme's the wrong word, but what I mean by this is first episode, we get the circlet. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is a show about the circlet. Then we have the Thieves Guild, and so I'm thinking, okay, there's going to be some kind of interesting power struggle here. We have the Residuum show up, which Orem is like, this is serious. We're totally beelining our mission now. We need to go to the Fire Genasi and talk to them about this. The circlet just stays on like someone's back or on Dariax's back. And so then me as the viewer, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, this is sort of the big push of the show is it's going to be about the Thieves Guild and the Residuum and like what's happening under the table. Well, then when we get to the Petrified Forest, I can't remember the name of the outpost, by the way. But
Firewatch or something.
Maybe? I was thinking Firewatch, but then I was like, is that a location in WoW? I don't know. But Orem says, hey, we have this Residuum. And she's like, oh, that? Okay. And actually, the half-orc even says at the end, when Opal is being like, hey, did you send her a message? Like, what the heck? She's like, I don't care about your weird little rocks or your weird magic rocks. And so I'm like, okay, well then, so it's not about the rocks. Okay, so it's about the these fire elementals and the sigil. So I think I'm just ready for there to. I don't know if maybe I'm not being patient enough, but it also feels like there's not enough room to be patient in the sense of we have 6 episodes left, and so as a viewer, I'm having a tough time seeing the scope of it because it feels like there's more of breadcrumbs for where the story could go without an overt, hey, this is what this story is going to be about. And it's also why I said at the start of our episode, I wonder if this is more of an introduction story to something bigger than what I originally thought, which was it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Do you have any similar thoughts? Does it make sense where I'm coming from? This might be the first time you and I have maybe disagreed on something. I don't know. But I'd love to get your take on sort of like the overall flow and direction, what's happening in the plot of this story.
Yeah, I think those are all fair criticisms. I think some of it might just be that's D&D, and I know you know that in terms of like there could be 35 plot threads, but the players pick these, and so that's kind of the direction the story goes as far as like, well, why is the Residuum not leading anywhere, or why is, whatever. I think some of it might be that. And I guess that maybe the counter to that is, well, this is an 8 episode thing, so they must have, like what we wouldn't be wasting screen time on this if it wasn't something, right? So what's going on there? And so I think maybe the counter to the counter would be that yes, it's 8 episodes, but because of the pandemic and stuff, they've for the last year have been doing things differently where these episodes are pre-recorded and I would go so far as to venture they probably recorded and completed the entire thing before they even, you know, began to produce the show, like, make it a product. Like, I bet they had it all. So I bet to me, it wasn't probably like this is gonna be 8 episodes. It was like, let's do this. And it ended up being 8 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So that, like, as far as like an organic beginning, middle, and end, I don't think it'll be like a jarring, like, I think they definitely
Mm-hmm.
had to know that it couldn't be too long. Like, they didn't just say
Right.
like take however many it takes, but like probably something in the episode happens. They're like, okay, this is like a really great organic place to end this
Mhm.
tale, so we'll do it there. But I totally agree with what you're saying, and it does feel like we kind of haven't found the main thing yet, which I guess maybe now it's this weird thing going on with the sigil and the elemental planes and stuff.
Mhm.
But again, maybe not, because how is a level 2 party going to deal with something like that? So
Yeah, well, and it's like you said with D&D, and I totally agree that it's like the common phrasing of like who's the big bad evil guy, and a lot of times the big bad evil guy doesn't show their face or its face until pretty far into a D&D story. So it does make sense, like this ambiguity around where is the story taking us to. I think for me it's the tension of really it's tension and it's the excitement of, okay, we have 6 episodes. I'm really excited to see where this hones in on.
yeah, me
So
too.
the other thing, and by the way, I don't want this to be like Blake's list of complaints. So these are things that I've been thinking about,
Oh no, yeah.
The other thing is I'm having a tough time with the party dynamic a little bit, in the sense of, and this is less actually, it's maybe an unfair concern about the show and more of this will be explained later. The party is very different from one another, and I'm having a tough time figuring out what has brought this group together and why they've chosen to stay together. The clearest example is when they're tasked with by Posca to go steal something. Orem makes it very clear, hey, that's not who I am. I'm not doing that. And he's sort of like the moral leader of the group.
Yeah.
He's the one who directs them with the residuum and says, we need to take this, we need to go.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming he's the one where when the Fire Genasi said, hey, we need you to go back to Yaman, he's going to say, yeah, I mean, if this is what they want us to do, we should go do this. But I'm having a tough time putting like the on paper reason for why the party as a whole would be like, yeah, like we should go do that, rather than like where my mind logically goes is a person here or there would, what I would assume, invariably say, okay, yeah, well, I'm going to go do my own thing. I'm not going back to Iman. I don't know. I mean, I'm just, there's a little bit of a rub there for me that I'm having a tough time digesting.
I mean, that's a fair criticism, and I mean, I think it could be a couple things. One, there's this central mystery of the show, which we already touched on, which is like, what happened? Why are these people even together? And like, what happened in the crater? Why were they there? Yada yada
Mm-hmm.
yada. So like, since that's such a big like black hole right now, when that gets filled in, it kind of might shed some light on like why these people are together, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe even right now, since they do kind of have amnesia or whatever it may be, they're kind of like bonded by this traumatic experience and are kind of like staying together until they can figure out what the hell's going on. But it
And
does,
maybe even unknowingly bonded, like in
yeah.
the a bond, a link to one another. And I like that. I like that line of reasoning. I didn't mean to cut you off though.
No, you're fine. But I do agree that it is like we got very like three very chaotic and literally with their alignments. Like I think all three chaotic neutral people with I don't remember, did he say he was chaotic good or maybe neutral good, or I don't know, but oh,
Dorian,
Orem, I mean, no, Orem.
Orem was. I don't remember what he said actually. Yeah.
But in any case, it does seem like at least like Orem and Dariax, for example, are very different. Like Dariax has
Mm.
admitted that he's kind of meddled with, thieves and stuff, and Orem is very like by the book. you know. So like, why are they together? And
Mhm.
one thing that actually stuck out to me that I forgot to mention earlier was when they were talking about what happened in the crater, and talking about how they had similar experiences. Dorian said what happened in there changed him, and he was talking about Orem. And he's like, that really affected him. And he was like, so if he wants to help you, I want to help you. And they were like, yeah, and if he helps you, we help you. So like something happened in there, and they are all like close because of it. And so maybe that, and we don't know those answers, so it is weird. But so maybe once we find that out, this will make more sense.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
the less interesting answer is that, I mean, it's D&D and they have to, like it can't, like if he's like, I'm not
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
this, then they're like, okay, well, what are you doing? And we got to have like a session with what he's doing and then what
The
they're
party's
doing,
all going to one place, and one person says, "I'm not going there," and you're like, "Oh, great."
I'm not going in the city.
You're like, "Okay, let's figure out what you're doing then."
Yeah.
It definitely is much cleaner for, yeah, definitely for everyone to stick together. So, the only other thing that I'll say, and I apologize, I don't want to come off as negative, but in my mind, these are just fair criticisms. I'm having a tough time with how the party, the energy, I guess, between the party and NPCs. It feels like a lot of NPCs are indifferent to the party, or sometimes even like annoyed. Like, well,
Hmm.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
But and I don't know if this is necessarily like a good or bad thing, but part of it is, in some ways, I kind of blame Opal. The way I read this, and I've only read a couple of comments, but this one really stood out to me. It was the best thing about Opal's character is that she's a spoiled brat, and the worst thing about her character is a spoiled brat. Which
Yeah.
which it's almost like every conversation is Opal. Like, for example, when they are given the mission to go back to Iman, and it's a bit solemn and a bit steady, and the voice is very tempered and measured. And then Opal says, "Did you send the message though?" It's like, oh gosh, like this
Yeah.
this moment is totally. And by the way, this is not a criticism of Amy in any way, and because I already said, like, seeing her experience D&D for the first time is really great. It's just the character. I'm just having a tough time not being annoyed by the character.
Yeah.
It's just cutting to the chase. I mean, that's honestly what it is. It's almost like the moment can't set in without this really abrasive response. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't. It makes me wonder. Like, okay, as episodes go on, is this going to settle a bit, or is it going to be like, okay, well, here's Opal. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. I got some of that too. Like I saw a lot of people talk about this from what I've like in the chat last night when I was watching, and a little bit in the Discord, that they were calling her Major Karen energy at that part. Like I want to
Okay,
speak to the manager.
that is so true. I did not read that. That is exactly. I couldn't find the words to describe it. That's exactly right. Yeah, she comes across as a major Karen for sure.
So, I mean, I think that criticism is fair, and again, it's this isn't Amy hate, but the character kind of has at points been a little annoying, and like you said, maybe kind of disrupted the mood of the moment, at least in that one part we were talking about there at the end. So, I think it's I think it will get better. I think it is part of her character. Like I
Sure.
think a lot of that is like an intentional choice, like that
Yeah.
she's to be that way and not like, just being obnoxious. Um
Well, let me ask you this. You spent a lot of time as a DM, and you're really phenomenal at it. What's it like for you? And this is actually even less about Opal now. It's about your own, like, in-home sessions. What's it like for you when you have a player who seems to be disrupting the both maybe the momentum, but also like the vibe you're going for? Um, any insights there?
I mean it depends on if it's like it depends on like the intention behind it, right? Like if someone's just being a douche, you know what I mean, then not cool, you know what I'm saying? But like
Yeah.
if there's motive and like reasoning and they're trying to like be true to their character, then that's fine. And like,
Yeah.
there's obviously a line there, right? That at some point you cross it, and it's like you're just being a, a problem, for lack of a better word. Um, but
Like it's like the hobo killers who like they want to kill
yeah,
everyone they meet. And it's like,
right.
dude, come on.
So I think, and I know you're on the same page with me here. Like at this point, I'm giving Amy the benefit of the doubt. I don't think she's like. We'll see how things go, but I think it's fine for now. But I definitely understand uh, people's that have an issue with certain moments, and
Mhm.
I think she's new, and I think maybe some of it's even like, oh, like how do I participate in this? Like, I want to be involved. I want to be active. Like, you know, hope I think her character will be tempered as time goes on, but we'll see, I guess.
Well, there's a lot of excitement in playing deity the first time, and especially since it's all literal verbal storytelling. There is, I know there's been in sessions that I've been in where I had felt like, okay, I need to be part of this conversation.
Right.
And if I'm not, I'm too detached from it. But like to represent my character, I need to be involved. And it's really challenging. It's been really challenging for me to figure out how to do that really well. This is totally my own phrasing, by the way. Amy's doing a great job, but I could, if this was the case, I could empathize with a sense of, oh, I need to jump into this conversation because I've really had to figure that out. And I haven't figured it out yet, but it is something that you're thinking about as a player is how much do I get involved in this conversation? And it's something that I think it's what has made campaign 1 and 2 so good is that they've worked together for such a long time that they know when it's time to, I don't say necessarily let someone have their moments, but there's comfort
Mm-hmm.
with their own character being absent from the
Right.
dialogue.
Right.
For better or worse, not necessarily that anyone in this current session needs to do that more or less, but it is a dynamic, I think, of a really strong D&D group.
No,
So yeah.
I think you're right. It's especially when there's more people in Critical Role than there is in this campaign. There's 6. This one only
Mm-hmm.
has 5. So with that many people, the spotlight, it can't be on everyone at once. So I think that is a learned skill and a comfort thing. And I think that's one of the reasons I think this could improve with time. Again, not that this is like, Amy sucks and needs to get better at D&D. No, I just, and on that note, I think she was doing that in service of her friend, right? Like that was it wasn't just Amy being frustrated. She was like, all right, our
Right.
friend came here to get this message done. And so she's like, my character is this type of like,
Yeah.
doesn't put up with that. So she's like, boom. So I think she was trying to do like
Mm-hmm.
an in
Yeah.
character, so that I
Totally.
applaud. It's just that, people, some people don't like certain people's personalities, so,
Some people are Karens, and that's,
so yeah. So I
it's the
don't
role we
think,
play. That's what the timekeepers have told us. That's your another Loki reference. I'm just kidding.
but yeah,
Yeah.
so I
Okay.
guess to wrap a bow on that is that I think it's fine to be annoyed with, you know, certain moments or certain characters, but I think as long as like that's coming from an organic place and like an authentic like trying to role
Mm,
play and stuff, then it's fine. But if you're just trying to like piss off the DM, then you're being a
yeah, yeah,
douche. And I don't
yeah,
think that's what's happening here.
yeah. So those were like my only thoughts from like the meta of it. I know we're coming up on an hour and a half. Do you have anything else you want to add, or any other insights or things you want to say?
I don't think so. I mean,
This has been a good episode. I feel like we've last episode we had to do a lot of
mhm,
frameworking or whatever that word is.
sure.
And I feel like this one we really were able to get in and talk about some of the cool stuff that we're wondering about.
Yeah.
Um, don't forget that Ted is the Spider Queen. We called it here. You're like, that's your theory. So
But it's
um,
true.
turns out Ted's like the warrior of light, tasked with defeating the Spider Queen. It's like total opposite or something. I don't know. But yeah, well, if that does it, then for our listeners, absolutely. Thank you for following us, checking it out. Please tell us what you think's happening in the show, what you're most excited about, what you're loving, maybe even some of your critiques. This is a place where we're deep diving. It's called a deep dive because we're literally deep diving and we're breaking down the episode into the nuts and bolts of the cool stuff that's happening. And
Yeah.
we'll be back next week with another episode talking about episode 3 of Exandria Unlimited. what else we got, Will?
We got well, one, we got our thumbnail. You know we gotta do that real quick. But
Of course.
just gonna give one more. I don't remember if we did this or not, so if we did, sorry, but I'm doing it again. Catch us over on Twitter at PXLists, Pixelists without the I and the E, PXLISTS. You know, engage with me there. We love it. I love talking theories. You know, hit us with questions and we'll talk about it on the show, as it were. Again, shout out to the Critical Role Discord. Hit me with your questions there. Really anywhere. Reddit, we might show up there. Probably should. But yeah, that's all I got though. So besides the thumbnail,
What should we do for the thumbnail?
I had an idea. We could try to recreate the Invincible meme. You know, so I think with the way we're outlined here, like I'm Omni Man and you're like the crumpled Mark. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. Where I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. What does he say? I mean, not that it's his thumbnail, so nobody can hear me, but I forgot what he says.
Man,
like,
think.
oh yeah, think.
Yeah.
So we don't have to do that, but that's my idea.
Am I on the right side of being like crumpled Mark?
You need to crumple the other way.
This way?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just do this. Like,
okay.
We got it. Ship it.
All right.
Well,
Nice.
listeners, thanks again for checking us out, and we so appreciate you. And we'll catch you later. That's the Pixelist Podcast. See ya.
Bye.